know that a young boy drowned the year before those two others were killed? His name was Jason.
Hi, this is Derek. It's May, and this month marks the 30th anniversary of the Friday the 13th movie series. On May 9th, 1980, the very first Friday the 13th movie was released in theaters. And ever since then, we've been getting all these sequels, just wonderfully cheesy slasher movies. It's had its ups, its downs, but surely these movies are a worthy addition to anybody's horror collection. Now, I've never purchased the uncut versions, which I hear are pretty good and have good features and everything, but I do have the box set, which contains the first 8 movies, and I like it. It's a pretty efficient set. It houses 2 movies per disc, and I think that's a really good way to have it, because it's perfect for when you're marathoning them, because you gotta figure you're probably hanging out with a bunch of friends, you're probably a little drunk and, full of pizza or popcorn or whatever, so you're probably sitting down and you're like, I don't want to change the disc, I don't want to get up, so yeah, it cuts that in half, which is good. But anyway, to commemorate this occasion, I thought I'd take a look at all the Friday the 13th movies. So, for the sake of chronological coherency, I'll start with the first one and make my way from there. So, hope you enjoy. Friday the 13th. Who could forget this movie? Who could forget one of the earlier scenes with the counselor on her way to the camp? A young girl brimming with youthful enthusiasm, with a bright future ahead of her, crying in fear, begging for her life, and getting her throat slashed, while we all sat there thinking, is that what it would really look like? I think we all have that primal need to witness others dying. It's sort of thrilling, and it's become a completely acceptable form of entertainment. But at least we're aware that we are watching a movie, and that it is fake. I'd like to think that we've come a long way as a society since the days when crowds would cheer in a coliseum as they watched innocent people being devoured by lions, but I digress. It's Tom Savini's innovative special makeup effects that play a key part in why this movie's so fun. They're pretty convincing, and actually still hold up quite well today. Watching Friday the 13th is like sitting through a gruesome magic show. The killings seen through the point of view of the killer are pretty cool too, and they work effectively. I like how sometimes they'll fade to white, but I am pretty glad they gave up this method after the second film, because sitting through several more sequels of this would have probably gotten pretty ridiculous. And speaking of the killer, it should be brought up that not a lot of people remember, mostly non-fans, that it isn't Jason, but his mother, Mrs. Voorhees. She makes for a wonderful murderous maniac in this first installment. She's a psychotic old woman bent on revenge on any Crystal Lake counselor because she was so distraught after her son's death decades ago, and she seems to have a split personality where somewhere in her mind lives this little boy urging his mommy to kill. Very creepy.
Don't let her get away, Mommy. Don't let her live. I won't, Jason. I won't.
If you're looking for a lot of character development, you're not going to find much here. It's a dead teenager movie. We get a bunch of the stock characters. It's a bunch of kids. They joke around, drink a little, take some drugs, have sex, get killed, that kind of stuff. Oh, and hey, look, Kevin Bacon. Ooh, poor Kevin Bacon. One character that really spruces the movie up, though, is Crazy Old Ralph. His scenes are just as funny as hell.
It's got a death curse!
There's nothing particularly interesting about the last girl in this one, Alice. She does the typical running, screaming, hiding. but boy does she know how to handle a machete. Sean Cunningham's Friday the 13th is a slasher classic. Is it perfect? No, not really. It's entertaining and well-paced for the most part, but I think the end chase was a little too drawn out, and it gets repetitive. But this is easily forgivable, because when it comes to the end of it, it does get pretty brutal, and overall, the movie's still fun as hell. The effects are great, the eerie soundtrack is great, and the scene in the end where the deformed zombie Jason comes up from the water is one of the most memorable moments in horror history. Verdict? See it. Friday the 13th, Part 2, takes place 5 years after the events of the first film. There's a new bunch of counselors, and a new camp for that matter. It takes place in a different camp, but is located dangerously close to the one in the first film, and Camp Crystal Lake, or Camp Blood, as it's ominously nicknamed, has become infamous for its killings amongst the kids, and legend quickly spreads of a full-grown, demented Jason Voorhees lurking in the woods. It's sort of a retread of the first film, except this time it's Jason doing the killing. They were still developing Jason at this point. He didn't have the trademark mask, and he had a sack over his head in this one, echoing the villain in The Town That Dreaded Sundown. But I thought they did a good job with him. It was pretty cool how he kept his mother's decaying severed head up in his shack in the woods and kind of worshipped it. We get the same types of characters over again. The music is essentially the same. The kills are equally brutal, and hey, how about that? Crazy old Ralph is back. Momentarily. One thing that really makes this particular story of mass teen murder stand out is the fact that some of the counselors actually unwittingly escaped death by going into town to drink while the others stayed at the camp and got slaughtered. Just imagine having to live with something like that and having to look back on that like, hey man, remember that night we left camp and went to the bar in town? We got totally shit-faced while everyone else got left back and was brutally murdered by a psychopath? Yeah, let's never speak of that again. Another thing that stands out is the fact that the lead girl who survives is actually one of the more interesting girls in the series. She does the usual running and screaming like any of the others, but for one thing, she's able to hold her own against Jason, which is pretty impressive. And we find out in an earlier scene that she's a child psychology student, so she makes for a good match against her man-child stalker. She's also able to outsmart Jason by putting on his mother's old sweater, and this just confuses the hell out of him, which is a pretty cool scene. Other than that, it is a pretty basic rehash of the first. All the key elements are in place, but maybe it's actually just a little better than the first. It adds more to an already creepy story, and the pacing is a little improved, and the characters are a little more fleshed out. It's a great sequel, and it has everything that you might expect from a Friday the 13th film. Verdict? See it.